How's it going, y'all? Devin here from Tactical Cowboy, and I got Big Dan here. He is essentially the Tactical Cowboy Training Solutions gunsmith. So he's here to help us talk about this super sexy rifle. You just saw us shooting it a bunch. It was really fun, all kitted out. That was all black before. Then you saw Braden go do his rattle can job. Those are some really, really good tips on how to camouflage your rifle, why, all that kind of stuff. So highly recommend you check that out. But let's talk about this rifle. So when did you get this done for us? Was that about 2 months ago?
Yeah, about that. 6 weeks, 8 weeks, something like that.
Awesome.
And I understand you've been shooting it quite a bit between then and now. So.
Yes, so I think I've shot about 2,000 rounds through it, a PMC X TAC 55 grain. It's gone extremely well. It's been extremely consistent, and honestly, I like it a lot. So I was used to shooting the Culper Precision DMSR, the suppressed super sexy rifle that Dan also put together for us. We got another video way back on that one. Mm-hmm. That thing is super tuned, it's beautiful, it's amazing, and it just shoots itself, right? It was a really cool experiment to go back to something like this, real old school, to then kind of get a different take on things, right? This is a very basic setup. This isn't a Palmetto State Armory setup, but I just looked it up online. You can get a very similar build from Palmetto for $519.
Yep.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's a freaking deal.
Excellent value. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
And Palmetto's doing all kinds of really cool stuff right now. With the retro type stuff. You can get the M16A1, the M16A2, the base M4. You can get rifles like this, commonly referred to as like the carbine, or a lot of guys refer to this as like a 727 or a 723. And that's available through Palmetto State Armory and a couple of other manufacturers. The build a really good gun. This one is kind of the next step up from that. It's a little bit more custom. There's quite a bit of tuning that goes into this rifle that maybe they weren't doing back in the day, but it's stuff that we've learned since then that we can now incorporate into rifles that we're building, currently, and just lends itself to being a little bit more shootable, a little longer lasting, things like that. So yeah, it's basically a clone or a reproduction of what Colt would have called the RO727, and it was essentially the last rifle that was created as a commercial off-the-shelf rifle that Delta, the Rangers, SEALs, a lot of special operations teams were using before the M4 was adopted into the U.S. military catalog by any of the branches and big service or even special forces.
So the SEALs were using it.
Well, SEALs, Delta.
That means we need to be shooting it, right?
Yeah, and so particularly, guys like this would have been about 92 to 95-ish, right in there. And so, it saw a lot of service in Somalia and Battle of Mogadishu, Black Hawk Down, and it's kind of that era. Delta was acquiring them as a COTS rifle, a commercial off-the-shelf rifle from Colt, and then putting them into service there. It wasn't actually adopted by the military at that time, but they were acquiring it through the COTS program and putting it into service. And so a lot of those guys in the early 90s would have run something very similar to this. And yeah, although this one under the hood is a little bit different than what they would have run. We've got different coatings on this that make it a little bit slicker, that shoots a little bit nicer with prolonged periods of abuse or not cleaning it. It's gas just a little bit different, still a carbine length gas tube. But the gas port size on this would have been a little bit smaller than what you would expect from a commercial off-the-shelf rifle back in the early 90s. And then obviously this has a Geisley trigger in it, which is a big upgrade from what you would have seen in the early 90s.
It's fairly nice.
Yep, and then it has a more modern aim point PRO or Pro on it, and that is a pretty good modern representer or analog to what would have been available back in the day in the 90s, but the one that's more commonly available still. You can get a hold of the old Aimpoint 3000, 5000, 2000. Those would have been on a lot of those early Delta rifles in the 90s, and then these would have kind of shown up around 1995-ish in its earliest form. But this one, I mean, you can get that from almost any good distributor nowadays, and build your own type of rifle. Same with the light. The light that they would have run back then would have probably been something like a Surefire 660. This is obviously a much more modern version, Surefire, but it's mounted similarly to how they would have mounted it back in the day with a barrel mount. And then that just goes right to the Picatinny adapter on a, that looks like what, a 340 Scout Pro?
Yep.
Yeah,
Turbo.
so with a turbo head. Yeah, so that's obviously very modern, but mounted the same way and in the same spot as it would have been back in the day. And then we also went with the 2-position tube on this to kind of keep it super classic. And then I see you swapped out your mil-spec charging handle there for.
Yes, I did.
Looks like, was that a gunfighter that's on there?
BCM, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's already going through some evolution, just like it would have in the hands of a Delta guy back in the 90s. Yeah. They would have changed out some things to suit them, but yeah, basically a clone of a Colt RO 727, which was essentially the last of the big time commercial off-the-shelf rifles before the adoption of the M4.
Yeah.
So
I love it. I love it. Yeah, it was really cool. Also, Dan's got on here this awesome Operation Gothic Serpent emblem on here. It's really, really sick. Really, really sick and sexy. Oh my gosh, look at that.
And camouflage
Mogadishu 1993, and it's all camoed because Braden got it. But yeah, really fun rifle to shoot. And like I said, it was really cool going back to something that's not super tuned and super sexy. Dan does a really good job and he makes them run well. Remember when you were telling me about this, it's like, how well can it run? We're gonna make it run as good as possible. Yeah. A couple notes on that with the functionality of it being all old school and all that kind of stuff. The stock was good. Actually, what's funny is generally I like a beefier stock, but I also like generally my stock to be 2 clicks in. So then when it's beefier, it's got more mass back here. With this one, with the 2-position, it's actually perfect. When I switched out with that other stock, it was the length of pull was all
long.
Off.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really nice. Another thing I noticed about this stock today, which I think you'll be interested in hearing, it was actually really nice with the plate carrier on.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's so tiny.
Right on, yeah.
Yeah, so the plate carrier always gets in the way when you got a big stock, but this one, it's only this freaking big. I mean, look at this thing. Little baby stock, and it's got no padding on it, so it sunk right into those little areas, and it was great.
So on that,
go ahead.
So back in the day, and so, guys in the 90s would have run either the stock like this with nothing on the back, just a checkered butt pad, or, butt surface. There's not really a pad or anything there.
Yeah.
But they made several different rubberized boots that would go on the end of these. And sometimes they would they'd elect to use one of those.
Nice.
And you'll see those often. You'll see them kind of zip tied or 550 corded to the stock to give them kind of a rubberized pad on the back of these old kind of N2 style stocks. And
Gotcha.
so that was a trick that they used to use when they'd want something a little bit more grippy or a little bit rubberized. But as you've experienced, this does kind of fit right in that shoulder pocket next to your armor. Instead of some of the larger profiles that we see today, those stocks are more of a grippy stock that you want on top of that armor because it doesn't fit in the shoulder pocket. This being so small, it kind of tends to do that. So
yeah, I might switch out some of mine, just grab a few more of these. I bet they're super cheap, right?
They are super cheap. B5 makes an excellent reproduction of this now, and you can get those from almost anywhere, Brownells or BCM or direct from B5. You can get them all over the place.
Very cool, very cool. Yeah, so you had the original mil-spec charging handle on here. I switched it out for the BCM just because...
Cheater.
I hated that thing. It sucked. It was just so tiny. Trying to grab it, it was like,
Yeah.
So then I switched it out, and it looks sexy. So that's the only thing I've switched out. But yeah, I couldn't handle it.
Yep, there you
Probably
go.
back to the basic training days. But yeah, no AMB selector because they didn't have that.
Nope.
Which I'd been running an AMB for like years now.
Yeah.
What's crazy is it just went right back to normal, and I was like, great. Ran it all with the thumb, and it was no issue. So you don't necessarily have to have an AMB safety selector. I like one.
It's super nice when you've got it, but not a big deal if it's not there, right? You just adapt to it.
One thing I love about these old school is the pistol grip angle. So I actually really like that aggressive grip angle. I know a lot of guys are going to more of a vertical angle these days, which is probably fine. I haven't messed with it, but I really like it because it gives me that good arm angle as I'm getting into the rifle, like so. Right, just like when I'm on my pistol, I want to be high and tight. This arm angle right here, or palm angle, I guess you could say, make sure I'm high and tight. And then I'm also ready to manipulate the safety. So I like it for that. I feel like if I had a vertical, I'd end up kind of in this position.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be completely up on the beaver tail right here.
One thing that you'll see with a lot of different vertical grip designs is that they'll have a filler right here, right? Or a little step up to fix that angle. So once they do put it more upright, to get proper engagement with the trigger, you kind of need to have a little bit of a filler right there.
Yeah.
This does kind of feel more like you're getting into the gun, like your trigger hand is a little bit more intimate with the receiver.
Yes.
And so it is favored by some. Not by me. The A1 and A2 grips are really old. I mean, that's what I started shooting with. But as soon as something else came out, I tend to like skew towards that, like most people do, into the more modern grip angle and a little bit more volume to the grip. Kind of helps out, gives you a little bit better trigger engagement. But man, you can't really diss the A2. It works.
No, it's sexy.
And for a lot of guys, it's pretty comfortable grip still.
Yeah. Another reason why I like it is I like this chunk right here.
Yeah.
So I can line my fingers up on it and I got another point of contact. Does it help with recoil control? Probably not. I mean, does it? Maybe a 0.001%. So it's not about that. It's just about points of contact. So as I grab the rifle, that little chunk goes between these two fingers and I'm ready to rock and roll. Yeah. I like it a lot for that. I like those little tiny things that give you consistency, right? And then let's go up to the super cool part, which is the carry handle and the Aimpoint Pro. So I had an Aimpoint Pro when I was in basic training. Back then I hated it. I realize now why I hated it is because I just absolutely sucked. I didn't know what the hell I was doing.
Yeah.
So shooting it for the last 2 months and shooting a lot of rounds out of it, actually it's great. I can't do any magnification behind it with this current setup, but we shot out to 300 and 400 yards at the family event, kicking ass 100%. The only downside I've seen to the Aimpoint Pro is its lower settings. It's like super bright, one click down, and it's almost not bright enough.
Yeah.
And then you go another
like half, and then half again, and then half again.
Yeah. It's like the steps when you adjust the brightness are very, very large.
Yeah.
Which can be difficult. Now, I did look at it under night vision. It was actually really good.
Yeah.
I haven't shot it under night vision because we haven't been doing that a lot lately, but I think it'd be great for that, especially with the height. But yeah, that's the only downside to the Pro, is I'm seeing just those selections aren't as good as like the modern EOTech.
So when I came down to the nighttime operator assessment course, I actually ran a Pro under night vision on that course. About halfway through, one of the guys that was attending was like, "Hey, can I try that?" And he was running a 3,500, maybe a $4,000 rifle, laser, the whole deal on it. I think he was running an aim point, one of the smaller, a T2 ones, a T2 optic, and I couldn't get the gun back from him. And it was, I think, a combination of two things. One is that you get a very similar optic height on this rifle as you do with some of the modern elevated mount platforms. And he was running a regular third co-witness platform. And so that optic height helps with the night vision, right? And then this is a very easy optic to see through with night vision.
Yes.
And so it was, I think it was a little bit of an added benefit for him.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for this item right here, I think he would have been fully into that rifle.
Yep.
So I've shot the Pro and the M68 CCO, the old military one, and I think that's based off of like the Comp M2. But yeah, the Pro is actually an excellent optic for a guy who is trying to get into something that does everything well, but doesn't cost $700 or $800.
Exactly.
They're really, really good optics for that. And on top of a carry handle, it's just, it's sweet.
Yeah, so here is your GBRS Hydra Learn Mount right here.
Exactly.
It's already built into the rail. I would say, piggybacking up what you're talking about, the T2 doesn't seem to let enough light through for the night vision.
It's very small.
Yeah, but this one, it's good to go.
Yeah,
I like it, similar to the EOTech.
Yeah.
But yeah, about the height. So you measured it, right? Is it exactly the same or super close?
It's within about 200 thousandths of what the
Hydra?
The Hydra is with the EOTech on it. So when we measured yours on the DMSR, it was, I think, 200 thousandths shorter than the mount that you were running with the EOTech.
Nice,
so,
nice. Yeah, so the tall
really
mounts.
Close.
Yeah, they've been really, really great for us. That's also why I was excited to run this, because I was like, well, I get the same head position. As you guys saw when we were shooting, as you guys saw when we were shooting, in the prone position, I had 6 mags on my front. If I didn't have this elevated height, it would be very difficult to shoot with the mag on the ground. I'd have to get into that upright prone position, a tripod position, if you want to call it that. But with this setup, I can still sink down, bring the stock in, and we're good to go. And like Dan's talking about with night vision, it's great because, I can go ahead and show you real fast, make sure nobody's downrange. My tubes are sticking straight up from my face. So if I bring this rifle up and my optics down here where our iron sights are, and I kind of have to sink in a bit, now my tubes for the night vision are going to be pointing down, right? Oh no. Well, if I just look up, now my tubes are looking straight, and now it's going straight through the optic. So that's kind of the whole point of that. And what's nice about it is I can keep that good shoulder position and look up nice and through, just raising the shoulder. So I don't have to scrunch my head down, don't have to, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, solid for night vision, for sure. Solid for night vision. Yeah, our homies from Optics Planet hooked us up with this, so we really appreciate that from them. And then, of course, inexpensive, right? If you're gonna get it from another place or whatever. If you get this super sexy custom one, which you could get if you reached out in some time, it would be not as cheap as Palmetto State, but you can get these, long story short, for a really, really, really good deal.
Yes.
But you do not have a free floated barrel, which can be problematic.
For sure.
Yeah, so what are you getting out of this rifle for a minute of angle at 100 yards again? Was it 2?
Well, if I tell the internet that, nobody will believe me.
Tell them.
But we're seeing, really, with gold dot, 75 grain spear gold dot, we're seeing right around 1 MOA.
Awesome.
And so, somewhere between 0.75 and say, 1.1, 1.2-ish. So it's hovering right in that area. And those are 3-round groups, right? If you change it to 5-round groups or 10-round groups, now you start to see things open up a little bit because of that non-free floated barrel. But in a 3-round group, you're right around 1 MOA.
Gotcha.
Of course, nobody's going to believe me if I say that on the internet.
Maybe we'll do a test with it one day, but I will attest to it.
It's a performance rifle hidden in a retro package is what it is.
Yeah, so I've gotten really good groups out of it, just zeroing the red dot. And I don't stress too much about trying to get a dime-sized group with a red dot at 100. I try to get it under a couple inches, then I move on, confirm at distance. But I was very surprised because you were telling me all this stuff with the build. It was like, oh, it might not be as tight, as accurate as DMSR, but it was still awesome. So most of it for you guys is going to come down to shooter error.
It is, yeah. I mean, it's legitimately inside of the size of the dot, right?
Yep.
I think we're running either 2 or 3 MOA with the Pro. I think it's 3 MOA.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're dealing with a margin of error in accuracy that's smaller than the aiming point, right? And so it really is going to come down to the operator using the platform rather than the platform itself. And that's really what I'm looking for when I'm looking for a performance carbine, right? Is something that's going to be better than me.
Exactly.
And it's kind of amazing that something that at least resembles a rifle from the 90s is still out shooting me, and they're a lot of fun. So back when I was a law enforcement trainer, I would train and teach a lot with these type of platforms. And one of the reasons why I was doing that is we had a lot of old rifles at our police department that had been given to us on loan from the government, right? And we were using those rifles because they were affordable for our agency to acquire, right? But they're just not up to modern day standards. And so we were kind of leaving a lot of our officers in the dust when we would incorporate more modern platforms into drills. And so they would be a little disheartened with their old, a lot of them were M16A1s, right? So we're running 20-inch barrels, pencil barrel M16A1s from the 70s. And they just weren't awesome. And so I would run retro stuff a lot in training so that they could see that what we were teaching could be done with the equipment that they were given. But that's carried over into training post law enforcement and into my personal training. I really like switching up between a carbine like this and something like a DMSR or a BCM or Daniel Defense that's an ultra modern carbine. Just to kind of keep me sharp and to work on using stuff that I'm not 100% always sharp with, right? It increases my span as a shooter and as an operator to pick up a rifle and be able to use that rifle to my ability. And this broadens that ability, that envelope gets bigger when I'm shooting stuff like this and then switching to a DMSR or something. It just really is nice to break that kind of thing up for me personally in my training. And so I have been using these since the 90s. And so, this is what a rifle looked like when I started shooting them. And it is still something that, I've got 2 of these in my car today, right? Nice. 2 retro rifles mixed in with my ultra modern stuff. Because they're just a kick to shoot and to really test yourself. So let me ask you a question about this gun.
All right, go for it.
So most operators, when they switch to a retro gun like this, there are 2 things that really get in the way for them. One, we've already addressed, which is the optic height, right? Because you're shooting off the top of the carry handle. Or you're not using an optic and you're having to run iron sights. The second thing is this fore-end length. How has that affected your training with this rifle?
At first it was kind of tough because I was used to reaching up, and this is exactly where I would grab in this area and put my finger along the barrel, point at the target, help me develop a good natural point of aim. Can't do that because I'll be burning the hell out of my finger. I think it helped though, because one thing, we're at the 12-week carbine program right now. The guys are running a bunch of awesome reps, a bunch of competition stages. We're going over the standing position, and one thing we were really emphasizing with them is it's not always how hard can you pull it into your shoulder. It's more so how much of a framework can you bolster up behind the rifle. And then Dan pointed out that really good demonstration. He had Isaac shooting just teacup in the mag well, but really bolstering up behind and getting a good posture, and he was going like bam, 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 with a regular gassed, nothing sexy rifle. So I think it made me better, for sure. And it's been nice because I've got that 10-3 also.
Yeah.
And I have to reach back farther anyways.
Very similar to that.
So that's actually what I was going to hit on next. I'm happy you said it.
All right.
This whole thing is great because it forced me to really emphasize the shoulder pocket, because that's the only way I can control it, right? Because at this angle, I don't know if you could see, Blake, at this angle, my arm is a little more bent than I'd like it. I like to be more so like that. So I still like a bend, but as soon as I grab up here or like this, I'm gonna get burnt. So it forced me to come back on the rifle and focus solely on the shoulder position, which I think was beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because then it's all about just posture behind the rifle and a consistent pressure back,
right,
but not trying to drive back super hard. Also for me, I don't like anything vertical because I'm not trying to pull back super hard anyways, and it usually gets in the way on barriers and stuff. But yeah, it was good. It was an adjustment, but I think it was a really good adjustment for you guys to go train. It does get hot.
Yeah,
Good
yeah,
Lord.
real hot.
Out here in 100-degree heat, like before Braden painted this thing, it was all black, and man,
well,
one mag, it'll get super hot.
And this is hotter than your 1996 M4, right? The M4 has 2 sets of heat shields and a much thicker diameter handguard to really help with that heat buildup. This has a single set of handguards and it's a single set of handguard heat shields and it's a skinny handguard. And so it does get abnormally hot, like uncomfortably hot, right?
Yeah. But that's another good training thing as well that me and Braden have been trying to focus on is using gloves.
Yeah.
If we're running full kit and all that kind of stuff, it's important to have gloves on. You're never going to do anything tactical like that without gloves on. Or at least I'd recommend you shouldn't, because you get in a lot of situations where if your hands get cut open, you're basically inoperable.
Yeah, I mean, shooting these has definitely taught me that operators back in the day were wearing gloves, or they had a whole hell of a lot more manly hands than I do. Because it does get like ultra hot.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, not a free floated barrel, but again, we've had a lot of success with it. I'd highly recommend a build like this because you can get the job done. Teaches you how to train really well, and it's at a really, really good price point. Last thing would be the whole Surefire turbo and this mount situation. So can you expand upon this?
So this is a reproduction that we tooled up a couple of these over at Culper Precision, and this is one of those mounts that came from that. And so they're not easily commercially available in this form, but you can find a lot of these mounts still. Like I think you can probably find something similar to this that will work on Amazon. Right, and so like it's a very simple. I don't know if you can see the top of this, Blake, but it's a very simple profile, just a V-shaped profile with a pick rail on the bottom. Back in the day, this wouldn't have been a pick rail because we hadn't invented or adopted Picatinny rail, 1913 rail, right? And so no such thing as M1913 rail. It was more a Weaver style.
That's what it was, Weaver.
Yeah,
I was trying to think of the
style
name.
Mount back in the day. This one's actually off of the pick rail drawing, and so it's a little bit different than a Weaver mount would have been back in the day, but it gets the job done. And we also knew that we were going to mount this to the Surefire pick rail adapter on the Scout Pro. And so that's what's going on here is we've got a old school barrel mount, right? So the bottom of this is aluminum, the top of this is steel. And then there's enough flex in the steel that you can actually buckle down with the bolts, and it gets like, it deforms just enough to grip it tight. And then it has a mount rail on the bottom that you can mount the Picatinny adapter for the Surefire 340 Pro Turbo. And that works pretty good. And it also teaches one technique that we used to use a lot back in the day, and that's this knuckle right there. Have you messed with that much yet?
So I've actually been doing the finger.
Have you? Finger?
Yeah. So I haven't put a pressure pad on here. I might eventually, but this has actually been working really well. Where when I'm mounting the gun normally, like the pole was way off. Mounting it normally, I'm right here. So all I got to do is reach up with this finger. And press in.
And activate the light. Yeah.
Is it ideal? I'm not sure. I haven't done a ton of low light reps with it. I've done some. We did some CQB with it the other day. Just making sure we got a good feel for it before we go down to Arizona. But it's great. Not super complicated. Are you going to be able to do it as well under stress as a pressure pad? Maybe a pressure pad might be best.
And this is a little bit more complicated nowadays because we've got this cool invention here to prevent accidental discharge of the white light. There's this little shroud built into here, right? Well, back in the day, we didn't have that. So back on the 6P or the 9P or the 660, the early Surefire lights, there was no shroud on the back here. So this button was kind of fully exposed. And so we used to just run our knuckle up against it, and that would activate the light. And so it was also kind of nice because we didn't get any of that sympathetic response, right, with activating the light. And using the finger on the opposite hand that we use to pull the trigger with our right hand.
Yeah.
And so we didn't get any of that because we would just butt our hand or knuckle
like
up into it. Yep, just like that.
And it's exposed, so any contact's going to make it happen.
Yes, and so it was something you had to be like super concerned with, accidental discharge, the white light, because you've just got this exposed button on the back, but that's the way that it worked back in the day. And so we were just lucky because, we weren't, I wasn't quite as old as, the Larry Vickers and some of the good classic Delta guys that were like taping mag lights and stuff to their rifles.
Right.
This was one step after that, where we started to mount, the 660 really was the big one from Surefire. And that had a tape switch or a push button. And I've got examples of both of them, but we don't take those to the range and train hard with them because they're expensive lights nowadays, and they're not making any more of them. So
Antiques.
It's very much so, like me.
No. Last thing I'll note on here is the birdcage flash hider. There's nothing sexy about it, but it's kind of the tried and true.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go with the muzzle brake. I know this thing might be a little snappier than the awesome builds that you guys were talking about, but you want a flash hider. So you want a suppressor or a flash hider to not get seen. Holy crap. I remember in the Army, me and Braden were talking about it. They, on the targets pop up on your quals, they would have the 3 flashes too. Well, they have that for a reason. Oh my gosh, bad guys, I see the flashes. Let me orient myself over there. So I think it's worth it. Yes, it's a little more recoil, but also that trains you better.
Yeah.
You get more response from the rifle about your body position. You don't have a muzzle brake on here that deletes recoil. And when we get these guys shooting, moving, communicating next week, and they're online working with each other in terrain like this, well, now if you're in a dirty gravel area, if I shoot in the prone next to you, you can't see anymore.
Yeah.
Because all my muzzle brake just blew all the dust right in front of your face, and that doesn't work if you're trying to work as a team.
Yeah.
Yes, that's kind of my thing on the muzzle brakes.
And I mean, A2, nothing wrong with A2. It still does a good job. And there's I think really, like, again, it's a reason why I keep training with these old guns, is it just builds you into a better shooter. If you can shoot this competently, I can hand you a modern, M16, M4, AR-15, and you are going to be a superhero with it, right? Just because you've built the correct platform from the bottom up, and you've had all those disadvantages of, maybe a higher recoil, no brake, the skinny handguards, no free float, the carry handle, the 2-position stock, two position receiver extension, the old N2 style stock, or car stock, like all of those things are I guess obstacles to be overcome sometimes for us, and we immediately just use our wallet to overcome those obstacles instead of becoming a better shooter ourselves. And so there really, I think, is still some very good modern application for a rifle like this in a serious training environment like what you guys do with Tactical Cowboy.
Heck yeah. Yeah, I think it's helped me, and that was one of the main reasons why you thought it'd be a cool idea too, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I've got a super sexy rifle that Dan made. Of course, we're killing it. He was like, let's try to have you kill it with something extremely basic to then show the guys it can be done. And honestly, after like one range day, I was like, great. We're good to go, hitting all the same standards, all the same speeds. I actually feel like I was able to shoot this a little faster.
Really?
And that has to do with the gas system.
Well, like I said, it's a modern rifle kind of cloaked in a retro build. And so there are a couple of tricks that we've pulled with this one. Just so, everybody on YouTube knows that you're cheating just a little bit. This one is undergassed for what you'd expect from a retro build like this. And we're not doing a lot as far as the buffer, but we do have the buffer weight matched to the port size. So it's fast, right? It's got really
super
fast, snappy recoil. And so this buffer weight is going to be down into that like standard carbine buffer area, right? But it is balanced and matched to the port size and the carbine length gas tube. And so it really is kind of a tuned rifle, right? Because we built it straight up from the beginning, right? Like it's got a blank that was turned custom for this gun. and it has a port that was drilled custom for this gun. The A style front sight post was set by us. And so it's not a barrel that you buy off the shelf, and that's where all the expense in this rifle really is not like, you can acquire these parts, or you can buy this gun, similar gun to this, for $600 from Palmetto, right? But we've got $500 sitting between here and here on this rifle, because of the match barrel that we've put on this, and the custom tuning that we've put into this rifle. So
Heck yeah.
So you do get to cheat a little bit, but it does handicap you in all those areas that are often like big ones that people are like, hey, buy a quality handguard, right? It keeps the heat out of the barrel. It keeps the heat off of your hand. It gives you a rigid platform to mount things like flashlights to brace against barricades, to free float the barrel inside of the handguard. And that's a lot of stuff that you get with changing out that one part to a more modern piece. This, it teaches you to deal with all of those things to become a better shooter. And, there are some issues with attaching a flashlight to the barrel. I mean, harmonically, it's a total sin, and it's like, we will be damned by the gods of the internet for doing something like this, because it is not good for the accuracy of the gun. And so we've done all we could do to make it as accurate as we could, and then we've handicapped ourselves a couple of times, which is nice. I mean, the pro golfers, they play with handicaps, right?
Yeah, damn right. But yeah, I would say that about the recoil impulse. It is super snappy, but then it comes back to the same position. And that's what we're trying to train with our body position behind it. So yeah, that's kind of the review of the build, more the history behind it. Dan knows his stuff. Obviously, I'm just the shooter. He can put it all together and make it run really well. So if you want to hear more from him or want to get him going on something for you, email us from the website. We can maybe get something going for you. But yeah, beautiful Battle of Mogadishu rifle. Any closing thoughts on it?
I'm really old.
I'm really old.
No, these are a lot of fun. Excellent tools to train with. Even if you're serious, if you take your training really seriously, this thing should not be overlooked. It's a platform that obviously has evolved a lot in the 50 years or so that it's been running around. I mean, even more than that, 65 years that it's been running around now. And so there are a lot of modern things that really make this platform awesome, but almost everything that we're teaching modern shooters can be learned with this platform. And I would argue that in some cases, it builds a better shooter than an ultra modern gun does.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. So yeah, if you guys are thinking about getting into this, I would highly recommend it. You can reach out to us or Dan and maybe get one of these, very similar, made for you. Or you could just go buy a cheap one. But yeah, at the end of the day, like Dan's saying, it's all about training, repetition. So I would say, if you got a cheaper version of this, an Aimpoint Pro and a cheaper Surefire light, you're looking at maybe $1,300-$1,400.
Yeah.
Then go ahead and spend a couple extra $1,000 on ammo.
Yep.
That can get you another 4,000 or 5,000 rounds.
And training.
Yes.
Right? Buy ammo and training.
And you'll be a way better shooter than if you bought the $5,000 rifle that shoots itself, but you don't know how to operate it. So yeah, that's all we got for you. You guys have been asking a ton about this build, but we haven't said anything because we want to build the hype. So yeah, leave some comments down below what you think about it, all that kind of stuff. We hope to see you on the range.
when the sun rises.